This is Walking and Talking, and it's the third video which I am recording today, and now I'll continue to talk about what I was talking previously. Like I mentioned this man, Leo from Actualized.org, and I try to understand why I have these ambiguous feelings towards him. And for me, like as I said, sometimes I really like what he is talking and how he does it, but at other times it's not just hatred, it's a kind of, contempt or dismay or what, scorn. Yeah, feelings like that, like, man, you're a fucking idiot. Yeah, it's like, I'm not saying that, but it feels like that. Like you have so many opportunities for be real. Like not real, but maybe it's about books. Okay, now books, right? Two ways of thinking. Previous video basically was focused on two ways of thinking, like modern way of thinking and pre-modern way of thinking, or just when somebody lives in the present and when somebody lives in the past, something like that. And then we can say that postmodern way of thinking is when somebody lives in the future. And since you can't live in the future, because when you go somewhere in your thoughts, let's say you start thinking about the future, what will happen at 2030, let's suppose, or 2040, or 2500. So you still live in present. That's the problem. You can't live in 2500 or whatever year it may be. You live in the present, and your thoughts go in the future, but it's not the future, it's present. Future, it's like the same when you think about past. It's also, you don't think about real past, you just bring past to the present. And for people who basically think in a kind of pre-modern way, they think about the past. And past for them is more important than future. And I mean real thinkers, not just some old women who discuss what happened yesterday or day before yesterday. There's lots of great men who prefer to this way of thinking, to focus on past and history, to study history, to derive some important lessons, and so they just live in the past, because like we have this past. You may think about culture, for example, as a kind of collective memory. Carl Jung had a term, collective unconsciousness, but for me it's much better way to look at this, what he called as collective unconsciousness, as collective memory. So we have like personal memories, right? And everybody has memory about his or her own experience. But culture, like the whole culture itself, it's a kind of collective memory. And you can go, and of course it influences your behavior, it influences like the way you think, it influences like what you do in life, what you prefer, depending on to which types of memory you were exposed to from your childhood and in your life in general. And so when you think about this collective memory as a real thing, and it's a real thing because all culture is like it's collective memory, and all books and all this lots of buildings and cities, it's like they weren't built yesterday, they were built like through hundreds and thousands of years by different generations of people. And when you go to this, like when you start working on discovering what happened in the past, when you go to this cultural or collective memory, you can when you do it on your own way. I mean, not when you just go to school and learn history, reading textbooks and you know and what and writing some essays and them and making even new textbooks. No, when you start really studying past, I mean, you say, okay, who am I? What I'm doing? Great. How? Like I am this. Let's suppose you get an answer, and then you go in the history and try to understand how you just your personality, or for example, you must say, I am a, you know, who am I? Okay, let's talk about myself. Why I just try to imagine some fucking idiot reader? I'm a writer, so and it's like one part of my personality. I perceive myself as a writer and as a poet. It's not like full part. There's lots of different parts. I also consider myself as, you know, as linguist and as scientist and as a man of action. Because now what I'm doing, I'm just talking, but it's not just talking. I'm doing something. I'm trying to influence the fucking society and myself, and you know, to change something, to make it to, you know, to improve the fucking world. Let's put it like this. So so I'm a writer and I'm a poet, and if I adopt this way of thinking, like pre-modern thinking, if I completely absorb with this mode of thinking, I go to the past, to collective memory, and I study everything which I can find about poets and writers. Everything that can help me, you know, to do what I'm doing better, or to understand better what I'm doing. No, just or not to understand if it's necessary. It doesn't matter what is the goal, what's motivation. The point is that I don't think like I'm a writer, right? And if I'm a postmodernist writer, let's say, or if I have a postmodern way of thinking, I don't talk about the past. I don't talk about the present, about what's going on right now, what I see, like, you know, this rise of artificial intelligence or whatever is happening right now in these new big cultures and kind of globalization. I'm not talking about this. I'm not thinking about this. I'm thinking about the future. That's postmodern way of thinking. So you just live in the future. You live in like 10 years from now, 15 years from now, and you try to really to understand what's going on there. You write some science fictions or just fictions which can help you to understand, but you try to predict the future. You learn everything about the future, and you don't just learn. Basically, you adopt your imagination, and you just working on. No, you don't need any information to practice this type of thinking. Of course, you can't just use only this way. I mean, in my, like, I would say about 30% or 20% of my mental activity, it's all about the future, and a lot of like 50 or 60% it's about past. And I read books which has been written like where throughout the history of humankind, and so I try to understand how, like, what makes a poet the best poet, and what makes a writer the best writer, and what makes a thinker the best thinker. I just compare different ways of thinking. I read different philosophers. And by reading philosophers, I don't mean that I I have a kind of super advanced way of reading, and so what I'm doing, I'm basically take a collected work, the collected works of some writer or thinker or philosopher, and I read them all at once, like for a few, sometimes for a few weeks, sometimes for a few months. I'm not doing it right now. I did it when I studied English or when I studied Russian, because in Russian I have a library, and in this library there's lots of collected works of different really awesome thinkers and writers and poets. But in English, unfortunately, we don't have collected works in libraries, and I try to to take different people. So in English I am reading now just different books by different people, and it's not the way how I used to work on on my writing and on my poetry when I studied Russian. And this bothers me a little bit, because I know that it's really powerful when I can just start like reading somebody's collected works and focus on it for a few months. It makes me really it made me really excited all the time. I remember all these periods when, for example, first time it was Saltykov-Shchedrin. Before that there was Castaneda, but I'm not going to count Castaneda because I haven't read this like at once. It took me more than a year to read his his books, and I worked and I didn't actually read them. Whereas Saltykov-Shchedrin, it was the first time, and I read collected works of Saltykov-Shchedrin at once, like 10 volumes. It's like 5,000 pages for a few months. And after that, of course, it changed the whole my life. And but it was like the greatest experience I ever had. Like reading, like then I read collected works of Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, Pushkin, Lermontov, Shakespeare, Belinsky, Hegel, Plato, Goethe, Feuerbach, for example. There was only 2 volumes, not just collected works, but 2 volumes of Feuerbach. It's better than 10 volumes of Goethe, for example. Definitely. Fichte, Feuerbach, Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, Thomas Hobbes. It's also like few volumes. Dobrolubov, 3 big volumes, 2,000 pages. Pisarev, Plekhanov. Okay, lots of different people. I mean, when I was reading Russian, I remember like every such reading, it took, first of all, it took certain time, because not certain, it took a long period of time to read somebody's collected works. And since I haven't just been reading all the time, I did lots of other things. I practiced like martial arts and I also was running in this amazing forest. And I was writing my own book, my own journal. So it usually takes few months to read somebody's collected works. But these few months, it's easy to remember, because your main focus when you read these books, your main focus is on these books. And then you can just look back and see like this period of time, what you were doing, how reading this or that person influenced your behavior. And then it like really, I don't know, for me it was the greatest experience. And again, in English it's one of the most important problems which I need to solve as soon as possible. I mean, to find collected works. Now I would like to read Locke, Hume, Hobbes, who was? Probably I would like to read Adam Smith and John Stuart Mill, Emerson, Thoreau, some scientists like Newton and Einstein. I'm not sure whether Einstein wrote in English, but it doesn't matter if I can find collected works of Einstein like translated from any other language. I would like to read them. Some modern writers probably like Wittgenstein, like modern, I mean writers from 20th century. Wittgenstein, Russell. Now I'm reading Bertrand Russell, The Principles of Mathematics, and it's like it's really it's too amazing. I can't even tell how I feel. I don't understand anything, like 20%, no more, sometimes even 10%, but I like to read it, and wow, it's like, I like to find something that I don't understand and read it. It makes me feel really good. And of course, the more I read, I know how to get from understanding nothing to understanding like more than after wanted to say. It's like when you start learning, the same as learning language. So you start learning language, you don't understand anything, and at some point you're already able to talk for hour and a half uninterruptedly, just, you know, about whatever you like to talk. And so the same with writers. And now, again, the problem is that I don't have an access to these collected works of some writers. And in our library we have only like some books. Of course there are some works, but usually it's like some writers which I don't like to read because they are kind of, you know, some novelists, and it's really I don't like to read novelists, and you know, especially some. Recently I read Neil Stevenson Cryptonomicon. It took me a month and a half, 900 pages, and I don't like to repeat this experience. I would like to find something that I don't understand and that I want to understand. Whereas when I read Neil Stevenson's Cryptonomicon, I understand everything, and there's like not just imagination, good fairy tale, amazing language, like he's a good novelist, no doubt. But you know, it's not what I'm interested in. It's not the content which I like to, you know, to get through and try to understand. Lots of people are running here today. Well, so how much time? 12 minutes to find. Yeah, one of the goals for the future. It's like simple. It's not actually a goal, because you know I can just buy collected works of the same Russell, for example, or you know some other philosophers of 20th century, or psychologists like Maslow, or maybe Rogers. Why not? Piaget. I read Jung. I read 3-4 volumes of Jung. I found it in our library a year and a half ago, and this was a good experience, even if I don't like Jung too much, but still it was like amazing to read one author, like 4 books. It was for about 200 pages, and it made me understand Jung and psychology in general much better. Well, yeah, I can buy the collected works of somebody in English, but it costs, I don't know how much. Maybe I need to search on the internet, because if it doesn't cost too much, like let's suppose it costs $100 to buy the collected works of some, say, Bertrand Russell or whoever. Well, why not to buy them? It's like, to my $100, it's nothing at all. Well, yeah, I need to think about it. It's really important, because it makes me feel better when I read books and pay little attention to the internet. Because when I don't have something interesting to read, I usually spend more time on the internet when I have something to read, when I have some books. And so, books. How did I came to that? How did I come? How did I come to this reading books? Yeah, I was talking about philosophers and about books in general. And I started from this pre-modern thinking and post-modern thinking and modern thinking. And pre-modern thinking, when you think about past, when you read books, and when you try to understand, like you answer the question, who am I, what I'm doing, then you see what I like to do, what are my goals, what I want to achieve, and then you just search for the information from in the past which can help you. Modern way of thinking is kind of the same, so you are focused on what you're doing, and you may consider it as as I consider it as like a pre-modern way of thinking. It's when I read something that had been written hundreds of years ago, and maybe sometimes thousands of years ago. And so I go deep in the past, and since there were lots of amazing thinkers, amazing people in the past, like really, I can't even say, like, some people from the past, you can't find anybody who is like even close in modern time. In modern time we don't have real thinkers at all. Like Noam Chomsky, for example, in English, if we talk about English, Noam Chomsky is not a thinker whatsoever. He is just a, he's just a puppet, a political puppet, and so nothing more. I mean, of course, it sounds really pompous, and who am I to criticize Noam Chomsky, the the most famous linguist of our of 20th century, let's say, in America. But no, as I said, I prefer to watch people and to read their books and then understand what they are talking and why. And I read Noam Chomsky, like Structure and Semantic. It's one book. I haven't read lots of his books. I admit that. This book was written in the 1950s, like 60 years ago. And of course it wasn't the same Chomsky as he became now. But I can listen what he is talking, and I listened to like his speech with Foucault at 70s, and I listened to some speeches which he, like some videos recorded on the internet. Yeah, I wouldn't say, yeah, probably I used an appropriate word, calling him a puppet or a marionette, but the point is that I can't listen to Noam Chomsky like for longer than few hours. And I tried to listen lectures which were recorded at MIT when he was talking about this revolution in science, in linguistics in 50s, and he tried to like present this kind of scientific revolution as something really serious, as something that what happened when we had the Copernicus revolution at like 1500 or 1400, when people started thinking in a way that was kind of different from what it was like for 1,000 and half years before. And Chomsky tried to say that in linguistics we had the same type of revolution, but it wasn't true. I mean, yeah, maybe for him it was the same type of revolution, but and again, so now it's not the point. I'm not arguing with Chomsky. The point is that I watched him, I listened to him, I read his books, and I couldn't say that he's a like profound thinker. If I take any type, like if I take Schopenhauer, for example, like I will give like 1,000 Chomskys for one Schopenhauer, because he was really strong man. He was really interested in what he was doing and talking. Whereas Chomsky, it's like mostly he is influenced by people, and there's lots of when you listen to him, you see that he doesn't talk what he thinks. He talks what other people want to hear from him. Not all the time, but most of the time. And so he tries to play a kind of a role of a smart guy. And that's what I really don't like in him, because it's just plain. It's just he takes everything very seriously. Another big problem. Like Chomsky, Jordan Peterson also, like they take things too seriously. They can't even, look at what's going on with a little bit humor, or because really, okay. So I said that in modern time, from my perspective, it's not just maybe there are lots of different great thinkers which are living right now and writing their amazing books and talking something on YouTube or whatever. But as for me, when I started reading like people who lived in 19th century, and now when I read people who just live now, I see that people who live now, they understand very little, and their fame and their, just thinkers like Noam Chomsky and Jordan Peterson, their fame, their popularity is based not on the profundity of their ideas and of their ways of looking at the world. It's based mostly because now we have different time. It's not too hard to become a popular thinker if you're just a professor at university, you're charismatic and you learn how to improve your understanding of your subject and yourself, and you just do it a lot, and eventually you get 2 million people audience on YouTube, and well, so 200 years ago it was like completely impossible to get even audience of 100,000 people, let's say. Yeah, of course you can get this audience, but the problem is that you can't talk to them all the time and they can't listen to you. But when you have YouTube, you can just talk all the time and people can listen to you all the time. It's like now if lots of people are brainwashed by media, by SME, but if we take somebody who is like some completely hopeless guy, like I was in my 20s, in the beginning of my 20s, when I was working, living with a girl, and so playing video games and drinking and visiting nightclubs every weekends, and smoking pot, doing lots of stupid stuff. So if we take a guy like this and put him in a room like with nothing but TV screen, and there's Jordan Peterson just talking or reading his lectures for let's say for 100 hours. And the point is that since there's nothing to do and I can't just turn off the fucking screen, I'll listen him. There's no way to escape. And just after listening of Jordan Peterson for 100 hours uninterruptedly, and I mean by uninterruptedly I literally mean uninterruptedly. It's like if you listen just a video an hour a day, it doesn't fucking work. In order to make it work, you need just to sit at home, find enough food for a few days, turn off your fucking phone that nobody can bother you, and just start listening, like Maps of Meaning, for example, and then Personality and its Transformation, and then Maps of Meaning, like previous course 2016, and then Personality and its Transformation, previous course, and then you go back and you listen like for, as I said, for 100 hours uninterrupted, or at least you just do it 5 hours a day, and don't communicate with other people a lot. Don't try to be unfocused. Be focused completely on this, on what you're listening and trying to understand what's going on. After that, it's easy to become a completely different person. And and after that you can just record your own videos. What I'm doing right now is like I'm listening too much. I spent like thousands of hours of listening to fucking professors, different professors. I can just name few. Like if to talk about when I started learning English, I started listening Chomsky, Jordan Peterson. Then I listened to a course of lecture by Shelley. How much time? Oh, I won't be able to say that. I had just 30 seconds. Okay, next time I'll probably this next time will be in a few minutes. I just take a breath, continue another talk. Or I just go up to the hill and after that start recording a video. Okay, let's finish here and it will be continued. It will be continued from mentioning different authors whom I listened to last few years.